Greetings, gentlemen. This is Ohio Dan. I wanted to make a video that is similar to a production that I made not very long ago, where I talked about the differences between the so-called real, traditional, or conservative women and your chameleons. And I tried to make the point, and I've done this in videos in the past as well, that really not all of these women are chameleons, but that doesn't mean that they're women that you want to deal with. A real traditional or conservative woman just wants a real traditional conservative man to provide for her pretty much. And to a large extent, it's just a difference in strategy compared to the feminist women. I wanted to mention in this video that this is also true for your generally anti-feminist women, or your egalitarian women, or the women that claim to be libertarians, whatever ideology or social movement they align themselves with. I want to put out there a reminder or the general idea that I feel like I've failed to kind of bring home the way that I want to, which is that these women, even if they're the genuine article, are not necessarily higher quality women than the women that are card-carrying feminists. There's not necessarily a whole lot of difference between female nature as exhibited by an anti-feminist woman versus a feminist woman. Now, I do believe that there are some exceptions when it comes to women that are good people. And those women that are actually decent to good people, whatever small percentage that is, those women are not going to be feminists. The women that actually want to do things the right way when it comes to how they treat men, how they conduct themselves, the sexual and relationship choices they make, those women are going to be some form of anti-feminist. But what I'm saying is that that is not sufficient to believe that the majority of these women are actually good women because they identify as anti-feminist, or as I mentioned previously, traditional or conservative or anything else. I have had interactions with women that are part of the men's community or peripherally part of the men's community in the sense that they make similar content or they talk about issues between men and women at some level in some form. And most of those interactions between the so-called anti-feminist women have ended up being negative. They ended up being combative. They ended up missing the point completely of what I was trying to say, even after I made it clear in a way that honestly should have made the situation or the point that I was trying to make crystal clear in their minds. I've argued in the past, especially in my younger days when I first started this channel, about how men are just better off walking away. Why are you still arguing with the feminist women when they're going to use intellectually dishonest techniques pretty much every time? It's taken a variety of different forms, but most of these women ended up being just as solipsistic, just as not compassionate for men's issues in reality. They may have identified as traditionalist women, but then they just wanted men to basically be traditional men and take care of them. Even the women that will go as far as to say, I'm against feminism in all of its forms. I don't believe women should have been given the right to vote. We would be a better country, regardless of which country you're from, if women had never been given the franchise en masse. Even those women may still treat the men around them like total crap. They may still be complete bitches. They may have had hundreds of partners in the past. There is no group of women that is isolated from what we see going on in the world around us in our society. Unless you want to talk about like Amish women or something like that, that's not the point that I'm trying to make. I mean, mainstream women, even the women that say I'm against feminism now, even the women that say I'm a traditional woman or I'm against feminism, I'm an egalitarian, a lot of these women, when you actually try to talk to them about anything, end up being either chameleons or they're the genuine article, but they're still not of good moral character. And it seems to me over the years that a lot of men, even MGTOW leaning, men's advocates, and so forth, a lot of these guys still do not get it. They don't understand that most of these women are ruined regardless of what their ideology, their creed, their views on feminism, or anything else happens to be. They are thoroughly ruined. Now, you could argue that a lot of men are as well. I'm not saying that men don't have their own problems, that the average guy out there isn't in decline also. So, yes, that's true as well. But women especially, the vast majority of women out there, not all of them, again, not all, but most women, regardless of what they say they believe, even if they mean it, even if they are for small government, even if they are for husbands and fathers being allowed to stay in the home, even if they are for women having certain gender roles that they're expected to perform, so what? That doesn't actually tell you much of anything about their character. And to some extent, I feel like I learned that lesson in the past several years ago when I started my channel and when I started making content. A lot of guys to me seem like they haven't put that together for whatever reason. They want to think that the cure for this entire generation of women being corrupted into hating men, only having a one-sided view of what men can do for them, but them not being expected to do anything for men in return, the special but equal yet victim, whatever strategy happens to be best for me now type of thinking. A lot of guys have not realized that that has completely ruined the vast majority of women out there in Western culture today, regardless of what ideology or cultural views they profess to have, even if they genuinely have that view on a macro scale that, oh, feminism's going to lead to the destruction of the family unit and that's bad. Maybe a particular woman figures that out, but she still treats her husband or boyfriend like complete shit. That doesn't surprise me much when I see it anymore, guys, because that's pretty typical. Again, you can sit here and assess which women are the exceptions, but I've had a lot of negative interactions in the past with the libertarian-leaning women, with some of the honey badgers, with certain women that have professed to be anti-feminists, but then when you actually get into discussion with them, they're just as bitchy as the feminists. They're just as solipsistic and self-obsessed as the feminists. There's not really anything qualitatively different about them. And even some of the so-called traditional women, even if you want to give them the benefit of the doubt and say maybe she really is traditional, maybe she was a virgin when she got married, maybe she does stay at home and just take care of the kids, so what? She still could treat her husband like trash. And there seems to be somewhat of a denial in the men's community. There has been for as long as I've noticed, really, for as long as I've been making these observations, that just making women more traditional or making more women anti-feminists, even if they really are anti-feminists, doesn't necessarily do anything whatsoever to improve their character. Doesn't mean that they're actually treating the men in their lives any better. And the only way to figure that out is to actually talk to them and see how they respond. And I've done that less and less as time has gone on because it just doesn't matter very much, honestly. It doesn't matter whether a particular woman is anti-feminist or not, or if she is, whether she actually treats men around her well or not, because the laws and the culture and everyday life for men is pretty much the same regardless. Every now and then, if I see a woman making good points about gender-based issues, about issues between themselves and men, I'll leave a comment just to see how she responds. And I'll admit that sometimes I'll make a comment that if she interprets it in a certain way could really piss her off or annoy her, right? I'll disagree with her at some level and see how she handles that disagreement, because most of these so-called anti-feminist women still don't know how to handle disagreement in a way that is rational and mature. They'll still throw a fit, they'll still call you names, and they'll still try to shame you if you disagree with them, despite them being anti-feminist or supposedly anti-feminist, or traditional or anything else. So I want to leave this topic here, guys. I'm kind of getting to a point where I'm frustrated talking about this. I feel like I've made my point as best I can. I don't think that just because a woman actually happens to be traditional or actually happens to be against feminism, who cares, right? That doesn't tell you anything about her And in order to know whether she's actually a decent person and actually cares about the men in her life or respects men generally, you've got to actually sort of interact with her and see how she responds. Just as one final point, when it comes to some of the more prominent women that have come into the men's community lately, Pearl Davis comes to mind. I don't know who some of the other ones are offhand, their names, but I don't know whether she's a chameleon or not. And that highlights kind of the point that I'm trying to make overall as well. I'm not going to sit here and say she's a chameleon. I'm not going to sit here and say she's not a chameleon. What I'm going to say is, why does it matter? Is she really changing the culture? Is she really changing anything about relations between men and women today? And maybe you could argue that in some small way she is. I don't know. I doubt it. But until the laws and the culture overall really truly begin to shift, which I don't think they will in this society, I think it's too late after generations of man-hating and feminism being on one side of the coin and traditional gynocentrism being the other. Men are expected to just man up, but women can do fuck all. So many generations of this have gone by, have lived and died at this point, or are being born today still, that I don't think we're going to fix this. But even if you want to say that some of these women could be a positive part of that, there has to be evidence for actual change. And so, to circle back to my main point, yes, it's true that Pearl may actually be a decent person and may actually want change, or she could be a scammer and a grifter. I don't know. You guys tell me what you think. And I'm not trying to go after her in any way, shape, or form. She's just the most prominent, recent anti-feminist voice out there. But unless things actually truly begin to change overall, it really doesn't matter. And if you want to sort of evaluate these women and you want to see if she responds, Pearl's channel is probably too big to get any response from her at this point, but you can test the waters and see whether a woman is like that or not. But my point is that most of these anti-feminist women are not going to be different in terms of their character, in terms of the way they act, their solipsism, acting based on Briefolt's law when it comes to the men that she allows into her life, when it comes to her hypergamy, her desire to get what she wants, and basically have just a different strategy. Most of the time, that's what it is, guys. Anti-feminism is just a different strategy than feminism. It all boils down to special but equal yet victim anyway. And I keep my expectations low, even if a woman really is anti-feminist, when it comes to her actually caring about treating the men around her with respect, because most of the time they don't. Even if they are genuinely committed to a traditionalist lifestyle or to being an anti-feminist, even being against first-wave feminism, which is rare to begin with. Most of those women are not against all forms of feminism. But even if they are, that doesn't mean that they're of better character, and don't expect a whole lot when it comes to what standards you can hold them to. Don't expect them to be a whole lot better than the card-carrying feminist women, because what I've observed over the years is that in the majority of cases, they are not.